You're really in a unique position, I think, having had that exposure to the cycling world and then coming across here. Are you reasonably satisfied that we run a clean sport in triathlon?
Yeah, I am. The culture of the sport from its very beginning is really different from the culture of cycling. And I think that's enormously important. We do test. We have our own testing program. We cooperate. We're partners with WADA. We're partners with USADA in the United States. We pay careful attention, and we test often in competition and out of competition. And we think our testing program's good. Cycling has always, as a sport, had a culture of you do what you have to do to be ready to ride your bike, especially in the 3-week tours. And that's just different from triathlon. Triathlon has started out culturally differently. It's a sport about individuals. It's a sport about individual effort. It's a sport about individual accomplishment. And I think that's super important in terms of what are the bedrock expectations of both age groupers and professional athletes. And it's a huge advantage for a sport. There's always people who are going to cheat, and I wish that weren't the case, but it is. And I wish there were, and it's not just limited to sport, by the way. But I think the systematic type of behavior that was uncovered in USADA's reasoned decision that really goes all the way back to the core of the sport, generations of people who've done what was required, to get over the Tourmalet. It isn't a part of the DNA of triathlon, and I'm really thankful for that. And we're going to do our part to keep it that way.
Is there, and this is simply cafe talk, I guess, and it's probably more of us sitting around cafes talking about it. Age group testing, a Kona and those sorts of things. Is that?
We do it, and we've caught people, and it's more complicated. It's harder.
Yeah.
Older, non-professional athletes have very different medical situations than young professional athletes, and the testing program has to reflect that. But we do it. Yeah. We think it's an important deterrent, and we catch guys too.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we catch them.
Yeah. Not a lot's made about that, though, is there?
We just had a very public case that was just adjudicated 2 months ago of a North American age grouper prominent guy who failed the test and fought us, and he's currently suspended.
Right.
So we're happy about that.
Coming across from cycling from the Tour of California and your exposure to that world, were you relieved coming to triathlon originally?
Very much so. In cycling, especially at the elite pro level, people talk all the time, the professional athletes, generally not for attribution, generally not publicly, until the USADA report, about what they had to do to compete at the highest level. And you just don't hear those conversations in our sport. And I think it's fantastic, but I think it's cycling has undergone a tough time, and hopefully cycling is going to come out the other side of all of this in a better place. But I think our challenge as people who care about the sport and love the sport, I'm talking about triathlon now, is we have to make sure we stay where we're at and don't go down the path that cycling is currently, that path, and be in their situation. Because staying where we're at as a sport where I think everyone genuinely believes that they've got an ability to compete at the highest level clean, that's important for us.
As an organisation, was when you decided to make that deal with Livestrong and Armstrong, at that time and after obviously it was made very public, the whole dealing with Landis and those email correspondence. Did you feel like you were taking a risk?
Sure. I mean, I think everyone understood, you know, during the entire period from April of 2010 until, you know, the USADA reasoned decision came out. I think everyone knew that situation, and everyone knew that where that had the potential to lead. From our perspective, it was, you know, we felt that what happened in cycling was limited to cycling, and that the attention that the sport of triathlon got would be positive, and that if there was a situation like the one that's happened, that the focus would be confined to the sport of cycling, because that's really where everything happened, and it has. And I'm glad, and I think we're fortunate that the sport of triathlon has largely been spared from the type of the type of publicity that cycling went through, because, you know, we haven't been a part of that. And, you know, Lance Armstrong, crossover athlete, was a compelling story, but ultimately, we have a very clear set of rules. We have a clear set of beliefs that relate to our adherence to the WADA code, and we have very clear rules that we're going to follow about who can race, under what conditions, and whether we are prepared to, you know, to take the necessary steps that people who are adherents of clean sport are required to take. So, you know, we're a WADA signatory. We believe in WADA. We believe in clean sport. And if Lance Armstrong or any other athlete is suspended or sanctioned, we're going to honor it. And they're not able to race with us.
Will his results in Ironman stay? In 70-point rate, 3 racing last year, will they remain?
I believe they will not. I believe as part of that, he loses his results. So he'll lose his win in Hawaii, and he'll lose his win in Florida and his podium in Panama.
Yeah. And looking back now, I mean, hindsight's a wonderful thing, we all know that, but is there any regret in making that decision to get him across, or was the publicity that Ironman got, was that enough of a positive for you guys?
He always was going to race. He was always going to do triathlon. I think from the time he started doing triathlons when he was 14 years old, he always viewed Kona as a goal. And, you know, the way our rules work is that, you know, he always had the ability to do it, either as a professional or as an age grouper. And our belief was having him participating in the sport of triathlon would bring fresh eyes, fresh attention to our sport, and would create an opportunity for more people to experience the benefits of our lifestyle.
The last few days, I no doubt you've been doing the rounds with all the media and stuff. Is it just, are you now that it's been put to bed for the first part, I guess, you know, the admissions, etc. Is it a relief for you then for just to start to move on a little bit away from this?
Certainly, the sport of triathlon moved on in June, and that, you know, I think the attention and the focus of our professional athletes shifted very quickly onto Pete Jacobs, Craig Alexander, Caroline Steffen, Leanda Cave, and I'm glad that once Lance was made ineligible, that the focus within our sport swung back to our professional athletes. I think the big step forward needs to take place in the sport of cycling, and I'm hopeful that Lance's admission will enable cycling to really close the door on that era, and hopefully come out of it in a place where clean athletes really have a chance to compete at the highest level. But from our perspective, you know, we're moving forward.
will the WTC be more careful going forward in making a decision like that with a say another cyclist wants to come across?
Well, anyone who wants to come across can come across. You know, Laurent Jalabert, you know, races successfully. He was third in his age group in Las Vegas. And so if people want to participate as triathletes, either as professional athletes or as age groupers, they can. We made, Lance Armstrong was and is a unique global figure. And should another unique global figure choose to want to race, you know, we'll look at it. And if we think it's a good idea, you know, we'll embrace them and try to use that to grow our sport and bring new eyes and new attention to Ironman.
Probably one last one before you got any more.
The interesting thing I find about just going back to Asia is we hear, well, it'd be remiss, I think, of us not to talk about Challenger's movement into Asia, into Laguna Phuket, into places like Taiwan. How have you viewed that, and how has your organisation viewed that?
Look, Challenge, Roth is a great race. And our business model with Challenge is pretty different. And I think that Challenge and Felix care a lot about their brand. They care a lot about the athletes. And I'm certain that they're going to be exceptionally careful as they start new races, because it's not just Taiwan and Phuket, but it's also Italy, Spain. They have a new race in Penticton. That organization, and I'm sure they're focused on this, needs to deliver an extraordinary athlete experience. And I know how hard it is to start new races, and the amount of effort that our organization puts into new events and delivering a high level of athlete experience. And I'm sure that it's a big focus of Felix to make sure that all these new races that are going to happen in 2013 are organized and executed at the highest standard. But from our perspective, if they help grow the market and bring new athletes to the sport of triathlon, and that's good for us.
Has their level of expansion surprised you in the last 12 months?
I think Challenge and Felix believe the same thing we believe, that there either is or will be great demand for endurance-based participation events. And the challenge is how do you deliver on your promise, and how do you make sure that every race that has your name on it around the world is of the right standard. And that's hard. It's a lot harder. And again, this is part of our experience, and I think we've learned this the hard way, is that it's easier to start the race, put it on sale, than it is to actually deliver an athlete experience, because ultimately, there needs to be ice at mile 20 on the run course. And if there isn't, you've got a huge problem. And we spend more and more and more time making sure that before we start a race, before we do anything, that we have confidence and trust in who's going to be out there. And it's either our employees. It's part of the reason we bought USM, is because now every race in this region is a race that is essentially administered, or if it isn't already, it will be soon. It's staff people. It's our company, their employees. They work for me.
Thanks so much for spending some time with us, and
it's a pleasure.
Look forward to watching you rip the course up tomorrow.
You will not be seeing me rip the course up. That's for sure. You'll be seeing the course rip me up.